Number 1.
First came an alert to campus and local media. A 24-year-old graduate student was missing, and Yale police wanted help in finding her. On the morning of Tuesday, September 8, a security camera captured Bhagwaniala, 13 PhD, entering a laboratory building at the School of Medicine, but none of the 70-odd cameras surrounding the building and attached garage showed her leaving that day or the next. Speculation abounded. A doctoral student in pharmacology, Lall was about to marry her college sweetheart. Could she have gotten cold feet? Suffered an emotional breakdown? Sneaked past the cameras during the fire alarm that afternoon? Days passed. Students, faculty, and staff grew increasingly worried that the 4'11", 90-pound Lall, described as smart, fun-loving, and endlessly energetic, had come to disastrous harm. Yale offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to Lall's whereabouts. Her fiancé came in from New York and her family from California. The young woman's disappearance became a top story on the national news, with dozens of reporters and TV trucks swarming the medical campus, the street outside Lall's apartment, and every move the police made. More than 100 law enforcement officers joined the search, focusing on the lab building at 10 Amistad Street, where, on Saturday, investigators discovered bloody clothing hidden above a ceiling tile, but grimly expanding to include, among other places, a trash incinerator 40 miles away. Finally, 5 days after Bhagwaniala disappeared, police discovered her body hidden behind a utility panel in the basement of the laboratory building. She had been strangled. It was Sunday, September 13. It was supposed to have been her wedding day. Then came the next shock. New Haven police charged Raymond Clark III, a 24-year-old animal technician who worked at 10 Amistad, with Lall's murder. One colleague murdered and another accused. It's the talk of the medical school, says Laura Smith, president of Local 34, the union that represents clerical and technical workers, including Clark. Nobody could talk about anything else. At press time, Clark was being held on a $3 million bond. His lawyer told reporters that he expected to plead not guilty. Police had not publicly laid out a case against him or discussed his alleged motive, except to say what it was not. This was not a street crime, Police Chief James Lewis said in announcing Clark's arrest. It was not a domestic crime. It was a workplace crime. Added Yale President Richard C. 1174 PhD in a written statement. This incident could have happened in any city, in any university, or in any workplace. It says more about the dark side of the human soul than it does about the extent of security measures. Security measures certainly come to mind, however, when an employee allegedly murders a student on campus. I'm in my 30th year now at Yale, and I can count on one hand incidents that even rise to the level of workplace violence, Union President Smith says. But there are holes to be plugged, and something like this brings those to the fore. Even though this was not a consequence of a security lapse, says Levin, there is no question that it touched off sensitivities of a community and brought to the surface anxieties about security in various parts of the campus, in particular the medical school. Yale is undertaking a review in response to employees' concerns. But even in hindsight, it's unclear what, if anything, might have prevented Lall's murder. The morning of her disappearance, she left her office at the Sterling Hall of Medicine and went a few blocks to 10 Amistad Street, a 2-year-old lab building where she did research. Like much of the medical campus, the building has tight security because of the sensitive work done inside, says Martha Highsmith, the deputy university secretary who oversees campus safety. In the case of 10 Amistad, that sensitivity arises at least in part from the presence of lab animals, which have attracted protest, peaceful at Yale, occasionally violent at other universities, from animal rights activists. Entering the building requires an electronic ID card coded for people who have a reason to be in that facility, Highsmith says. Getting into the basement, where Lall's body was found, requires another level of access. Certain parts of the basement, including places where Clark regularly worked, are restricted to yet a third subgroup. Citing law enforcement sources, the Hartford Courant reported that card swipe records indicate Lall entered one such restricted basement lab area. Clark swiped in soon after, and Lall was never seen alive again. If tighter security would not necessarily have helped, what about closer pre-employment screening? Yale now does routine criminal background checks on new employees. Clark, who was hired before that policy was put in place, had no prior criminal record. But his high school girlfriend told Good Morning America that she had to call the police when she broke up with him. "I wanted out of the relationship because he would get very angry often," she said. "He would frighten me. He would get physical. After the breakup, for about 2 weeks I was escorted from the school to my car." According to the online New Haven Independent, which obtained a copy of the 2003 police report on that incident, the girlfriend also told police that Clark had forced her to have sex with him. She declined to press charges, the Independent reported. Others who know Clark have offered conflicting descriptions of his behavior. Some former co-workers and neighbors told reporters he was controlling and volatile, while others described him as pleasant and friendly. Levin says that, to his knowledge, Clark's personnel record at Yale contained no disciplinary action or other indication of anything out of the ordinary.
Number 2.
Police in Ohio investigating the abduction and killing of a 20-year-old woman discovered a secret room hidden at the back of a suspect's barn with blood on the walls and restraints for holding people against their will, authorities said. The grim discovery was made by officers investigating the death of Sierah Joughin, who disappeared while riding her bicycle in Fulton County, near Toledo, on July 19. Her bike was discovered abandoned in a cornfield in Amboy Township, where deputies found evidence of a struggle, including crops knocked over, a screwdriver, and a motorcycle helmet covered with blood, according to a search warrant executed by the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. The warrants, provided to BuzzFeed News by a Fulton County clerk, were made public after legal action by the Toledo Blade newspaper. Joughin's body was found July 22 in a shallow grave roughly a mile away from the cornfield where her bike was discovered. According to authorities, as deputies interviewed neighbors, James Worley, 57, told them that at the time of Joughin's disappearance his motorcycle broke down and he pushed it into the cornfield where he found 2 bicycles. He said he lost his helmet and screwdriver at the scene. Worley made the comments that he didn't steal anything or kill anyone. Interviewers observed what appeared to be fresh marks on the arms of Mr. Worley and what appeared to be bruising on his lower legs, Sergeant Matt Smithmere wrote in a search warrant. Cell phone records were also said to show that Worley had spent almost 2 hours at the scene of the abduction and had been in the area where the body was discovered. Deputies reportedly found Joughin's blood on Worley's motorcycle at his home, as well as zip tie restraints, a ski mask, and mace in his truck. At the back of Worley's barn, authorities allegedly found a hidden room, which contained a hidden carpet-lined freezer. They also found blood on the room's walls and in the freezer, according to the warrant. Worley allegedly told police he had hidden cameras around his property. Authorities also reported finding several pairs of female panties and undergarments found in the property, one of which had blood on them, according to the warrants. Worley had previously been convicted of abduction and ordered to see a therapist, who he allegedly told he learned from each abduction he had done, and the next one he was going to bury, Smithmere wrote. Worley fits the profile of a serial offender and could potentially have additional unknown victims who could have been kept at the above-described location, Smithmere warned in a warrant. These types of offenders will often keep trophies. Worley is being held in the Correctional Center of Northwest Ohio on charges of abduction and aggravated murder. Joughin's body was found on July 22. A previous version of this story incorrectly stated Worley's body was found.
Number 3.
The bizarre case of Charlie Bothuell V, found hiding in his parents' basement, has become even stranger as disturbing details of his home life are revealed. The world was mesmerized by the reaction of Charlie's father when he was told on live television that his son had been found alive, hiding in the basement after being missing for almost 2 weeks. Since then, mystery has deepened over why Charlie went missing and whether someone had been helping him to hide. When Detroit police found the boy in the basement of his family's multiple-unit condo building, he was surrounded by chicken, soft drinks, cereal and Gatorade. He was also barricaded behind a dresser and a 55-gallon drum. There's no way he could have erected this makeshift area of concealment, I'll call it. He certainly was excited to see us, Detroit Police Chief James Craig said. Officers had searched the home at least 3 times before they found him on Wednesday afternoon. They do not believe he was there the whole time. The basement was connected to other apartments via a tunnel that also provided access to the outside world. In a petition filed by Child Protective Services for the removal of Charlie's half-siblings, the boy told investigators that his stepmother Monique Dillard Bothuell put him in the basement and told him not to come out. When the boy got hungry, he would sneak upstairs to get food when no one was home. Accusations of abuse have also emerged. He was very skinny and almost looked like a cancer patient. He had marks all over his arms and chest, one of Charlie Bothuell's grandmothers told investigators. A half-circular scar was discovered on his chest, and the boy told investigators his dad drove a PVC pipe into his chest, according to the court records. Old scars were reportedly found on Charlie's buttocks and were also believed to be caused by the pipe. Other documents provided at a Friday afternoon custody hearing over Charlie contained accusations that Charlie had bruises and marks after allegedly being abused by his father and stepmother Monique Dillard Bothuell. I read this petition. It says that Monique took Charlie into the basement and hit him and told him not to come out, Mark Magidson, the attorney for Charlie Bothuell's father and stepmother said. Why would she do that? I don't understand that. It makes no sense. This is the same woman who then got the police involved and brought all of this on. None of this makes sense. There were reports that Charlie was often beaten with a PVC pipe that was reportedly found covered in blood at the home. He was also homeschooled, and his father Charles Bothuell IV was strict about his workouts, forcing him to walk 4,000 steps daily on an elliptical machine. The average person does about 3,500 to 5,000 steps a day. His stepmother told police the boy didn't complete his daily exercise routine, and she had reported this to his father. Worried about his reaction, Charlie took off. The boy's father, who made tearful television pleas for help while his son was missing, has said he had no idea the boy was in the basement. Charles Bothuell IV reported his son missing on June 14. The boy had been working out at home about 9 p.m., went to use the restroom, and never returned, Bothuell told police. There were also reports that Charlie may have been worried about being sent to military school later this year. He has not been released into his father's care, instead he is staying with his mother, and police have barred Bothuell from having any contact with his son. Meanwhile, Charlie's stepmother has since been arrested on a parole violation unrelated to the boy's disappearance. She was previously convicted of buying a gun without a permit. Dillard Bothuell has been ordered to wear a tether, and a judge set personal bond at $5,000. She's due back in court July 11. Her 4-year-old son and 10-month-old daughter have been placed in the custody of Child Protective Services. Despite accusations that she had instructed the boy to go to the basement, both parents deny they had anything to do with Charlie's disappearance.
Number 4.
25-year-old Jessica Heeringa was a single mother raising her 3-year-old son. She had hoped to go back to college to study accounting. In order to provide for her son, she worked as a clerk at the ExxonMobil station on Sternberg Road in Norton Shores, Michigan. She normally worked the night shift. The station normally closed at 11:30 p.m. On Friday, April 26, 2013, she was abducted from the station while working the evening shift. Her last known sale was at 10:54 p.m. A customer discovered the store abandoned at 11:07 p.m. The police were called at 11:15 p.m. When they arrived, they found her cigarettes and lighter next to the cash register. Her car was left behind. No money or any of her belongings were taken from the store. A small amount of blood was found outside the back door. It was later determined to be hers. However, the amount was too small to be from a fatal wound. The gas station manager came forward and said that on the night of the abduction, she and her husband were driving nearby and had noticed a minivan pulled up right next to the back door of the store. Its hatch was open, and the driver tried to close it. Something was in its way, so he opened it again, moved the object, and closed it. He then either headed into Muskegon or hopped on the Expressway 96 and headed out of town. Unfortunately, there were no surveillance cameras at the gas station, so none of the events of that night were recorded. Jessica also worked by herself, which may have led to her being a target. Another witness reported seeing a man flirting with Jessica before she disappeared. He has never been identified, and the case remains unsolved. An unidentified man was seen near the back of the gas station shortly before Jessica was abducted. The possible suspect is described as a Caucasian male in his 30s, approximately 6'0", with a medium to heavy build and brown or sandy blonde hair. He was seen driving a silver minivan, possibly a 2005 Chrysler Town & Country. It was seen on a surveillance video about a mile away from the station at around 11:04 p.m. In April 2016, 46-year-old Jeffrey Willis was arrested for attempting to abduct a 16-year-old girl. In May, he was also charged with the 2014 murder of Rebecca Blech after ballistics evidence connected him to the crime. Authorities also identified him as a person of interest in Jessica's disappearance since he owned a silver minivan similar to the one that was believed to have been driven by her abductor. In his van were several incriminating items, including rope, leather restraints, chains with handcuffs, insulin, and syringes. He had the van detailed shortly after her disappearance. He also matched the witness's description of the suspect down to the blonde streaked hair. He had apparently frequented the gas station that she vanished from. Finally, in September 2016, he was charged with her kidnapping and murder. Based on credit card receipts, investigators discovered that Willis had visited the store at least 15 times prior to Jessica's abduction. A witness reported seeing him talking to Jessica there the day before her abduction. Phone records also placed him there just hours before it. When questioned, he told police that he was home at the time. However, phone records, which included a phone call from his wife, who he was supposedly at home with, placed him near his grandfather's house, which is close to the store. Following the abduction, he did not show up for work for several days. Near the spot of blood behind the store, investigators found pieces of a laser sight for a Walther P22 handgun. A Walther P22 was found in Willis's van. It happened to be missing those same pieces. Its original owner identified the laser sight as belonging to the gun. The gun was also determined to be the murder weapon in Rebecca's case. Investigators also found a folder labeled Vicks on Willis's computer. In it were subfolders about Rebecca and Jessica. He also changed his passwords to J4L27H13, which includes her initials and the day after her disappearance. Finally, Willis's cousin, Kevin Blum, confessed to police that he had seen Jessica's body in the basement of their grandfather's house. He also claimed that he helped Willis dispose of it. Furthermore, he stated that Willis had been following her and that on the night of her abduction, he attacked and hit her, knocking her unconscious. He then put her in his van and took her to the house. For unknown reasons, Blum later recanted his statement but pleaded no contest to helping dispose of her body. When police went to the house, they found that Willis had padlocked it. In the basement, they found several bottles of bleach. In May 2018, Willis went on trial for Jessica's kidnapping and murder. His defense attorneys claimed that she was either still alive or had died of a drug overdose after meeting with her drug dealer. The jury took just 2 hours to find him guilty on May 16. He was given a second mandatory life sentence. The first was for Rebecca's murder. In December 2019, his conviction was upheld. Sadly, Jessica's body has never been found. Because of this, her family believes that she is still alive.
Number 5.
On Friday, April 20, 2012, around 7:12 a.m., Gerard Baden-Clay phoned authorities to report that his 43-year-old wife Allison was missing. Allison had gone for a walk sometime in the early morning hours from their affluent neighborhood of Brookfield. This was something she did regularly according to Gerard. However, she did not return in time for breakfast the next day. The police immediately began their missing person investigation. They asked neighbors if they had seen anything or if they could recall seeing either of the Baden-Clay's cars between the hours of 8:30 p.m. that Thursday through 8 a.m. Friday. The cars were a Holden Captiva and a Toyota Prado. Immediately a search began involving hundreds of volunteers and police that would continue for 10 days. This was an exhaustive search over difficult terrain involving helicopters and police on horseback. They searched the nearby mountain forest in the D'Aguilar National Park. Firefighters also searched closed mine shafts. Sergeant Sharky Lang coordinated all of these efforts. On April 23, police set up a mannequin in the Baden-Clay front yard with the same outfit Allison was last seen wearing as reported by Gerard. In the end, it would not be the police that found Allison, but a kayaker. The kayaker was on the Colo Creek, near Anstiat on April 30. Allison was found around 11 a.m. along the muddy banks of the creek. She was wearing exercise attire and lying on her side. Her arms were splayed out and she was in an advanced stage of decomposition. Her blue top had been pulled over her head, which suggested she had been dragged. Allison's identity was confirmed through dental records. In 2007, Tony McHugh was a client of Gerard's real estate company and soon was taken on as an agent. Tony was a married mother when the two began an affair in August 2008. They each told the other their marital problems. Gerard told Tony that he was only in his marriage for his daughters and did not love his wife. Tony ended up leaving her marriage of 17 years. Gerard had told Tony that he planned on leaving his wife and marrying her one day. 3.5 years later, Allison found out about the affair. This resulted in not only ending the affair, but with Tony being fired from Gerard's Century 21 firm in October 2011. A friend eventually helped her secure a position with Remax Real Estate Company. This friend had been a business partner of Gerard's, and that is how they met Tony. 4 months later the two would reconnect. The pair met at a coffee shop. Gerard Baden-Clay showed up not wearing his wedding ring. He told Tony that he loved her and planned on leaving his wife. In the past, he said he couldn't leave Allison due to Allison suffering from depression. Gerard had also established a fake email account so the two could communicate without Allison knowing. Per Gerard, Allison was looking at his phone calls and text messages and had even placed a curfew on him. This would have been a surprise to Allison since the couple were going through marriage counseling and had no plans on divorcing. In fact, the couple had attended a marriage counseling session 3 days before her disappearance. Gerard Baden-Clay liked to put on appearances of being a middle-class devoted husband and father. His standing in the community and how the community viewed him were important to him. The reality was something quite different. Gerard had of course reignited his relationship with Tony McHugh. Gerard didn't seem to be working on his marriage and usually degraded Allison openly in front of others. During some business outings that Gerard and Tony attended together, they would be openly affectionate towards one another publicly. He also owed a lot of money to various friends and business associates. At one point, Gerard told his business partners that they were in financial trouble. This shocked them as they had been having an excellent year and wondered where had all the money gone. The company needed to borrow money. All three partners agreed that any money going out of the business had to have all three of their signatures on it. Basically, Gerard wasn't allowed to be the only one dealing with the finances anymore. This only lasted a few weeks with Gerard Baden-Clay confronting his partners. He did not want to keep having getting their signatures. He stated that he didn't feel like they trusted him. Superintendent Mark Ainsworth was leading the investigation into Allison's murder. Investigators found a boatload of evidence of Gerard's affair with Tony, not to mention the financial difficulties Gerard had gotten himself into. What they discovered is that on April 19, Gerard had a conversation with Tony around 5 p.m. During this conversation, he told Tony that she and Allison would be at the same real estate training the next day. Tony questioned their relationship. Gerard assured her that he was planning on leaving Allison and that he loved Tony. He said he was going to marry her. Tony asked for more specifics of his plan on leaving his marriage. A 60 Minutes journalist asked Tony if she felt that her pressuring Gerard led to him murdering his wife. Tony didn't feel she had pressured him. She had been patient with him for years and wasn't planning on ending what they had. Gerard's version of what happened that last night was that he and Allison had been up watching television after the kids had gone to bed. Allison started asking him questions about his affair. This was suggested by their marriage counselor. After a while, Gerard got tired of the questioning. He went to bed, leaving Allison in the living room around 10 p.m. He claimed that when he got up the next day, Allison was gone. At 7:15 a.m., he called the 000. He was calm when he placed the call. When the first officer arrived at the house and saw Gerard Baden-Clay in person, he called his superior, Sergeant Andrew Jackson. The reason? The large visible scratches that looked fresh on Gerard's face. When Sergeant Jackson and his partner arrived, they noticed an older man placing a vacuum cleaner in the back of a vehicle. This man would turn out to be Gerard's father. Gerard claimed that the scratches were a result of a shaving accident. The police didn't buy this excuse. The wound more like fingernail scratches. One officer on the scene knew the marks didn't look like a shaving accident. Police felt that someone had attempted to clean up the house before they had arrived on the scene. Sergeant Jackson decided that he was going to record his conversation with Gerard. He also did allow anyone to leave the premises and declared the house and grounds a crime scene. He also called on every available officer to begin a search for Allison. Meanwhile, Gerard was still being questioned. Even though he wasn't being difficult per se, officers had trouble getting straight answers from him. Gerard worked hard to make it seem that he was accident-prone to the police. Supposedly, he cut up his cheek with a blunt razor. He cut his hands when he had been changing a light bulb and it shattered. Believe it or not, a caterpillar had attacked him, leaving red marks over his left side of his chest. The police also discovered that right before Gerard contacted them to report Allison missing, he had done a computer search on the right to remain silent. When Allison's friends found out that Allison was missing, they immediately knew something horrible had happened. They felt that Gerard had something to do with their friend's disappearance. They didn't believe that Allison had just taken off or even took her own life, because she would have never left her daughters. The same day that Gerard reported Allison missing, he had talked to Tony. She had called him from her conference late that afternoon. Gerard told her that Allison was missing after not returning home from her walk. He also indicated that they shouldn't talk for a while and couldn't see each other. Tony felt at that time that Allison may have taken off. Gerard had claimed that they had not argued. Tony just didn't believe Gerard had any involvement in her disappearance. Tony would say in the interview that she didn't hate Allison and didn't want anything bad to happen to her. In the days after Allison's disappearance, Gerard kept calling Tony. He used payphones in the hopes of not being discovered. He informed her that the police knew about their affair and were looking to talk to her. What Gerard didn't know was that Tony was in the middle of a police interview when he contacted her. Gerard wanted to know if she told the police that they were currently seeing each other. She informed Gerard that she told the police they were currently involved because that was the truth. Gerard's story didn't match Tony's. He told police that he had an affair, but currently, he and Tony were not in a relationship. He also intimated that his marriage with Allison was good. In the 10 days that Allison had been missing, Gerard continued to play the role of the grieving husband. However, he didn't do anything to help in searching for his missing wife. He did give a TV interview with his sister at his side. He related that he had helped the police as much as he could. Meanwhile, the forensic team had descended on the Baden-Clay residence and his real estate business. They collected laptops, computers, hard drives, and other evidence they thought was pertinent to the investigation. They also confiscated computers from Gerard's parents' home. He and his girls had been staying there. One of the pieces of evidence collected was Gerard's razor blade. There was no evidence of blood on the razor blade, however, blood was found in the Captiva. A contact smear with streaks that ran down to the floorboards. Blood and a strand of hair found in the back of the car. It was tested and matched Allison. Investigators didn't feel that Tony had anything to do with Allison's disappearance and subsequent murder. Investigators felt that only one person was responsible for Allison's murder, and that was her husband, Gerard Baden-Clay. Police thought he had dumped her body under a bridge and hidden it from the roadway in the hopes that she would wash away with the rising water levels in the creek. Throughout the investigation, police talked to a variety of individuals. They slowly put the pieces of the puzzle pieces together. One of those witnesses was Melissa Roman. Melissa had been involved in a real estate deal with Gerard's office. After the business deal, Gerard tried to get Melissa to come work for him. When she turned him down, he had another offer for her: help him hire someone to kill his wife. When she asked why he would want to kill his wife, Gerard never answered her question and changed the subject. A doctor with the Kenmore Clinic Medical Center was a witness in the case. Gerard visited him on Saturday, April 20th at 8:30 a.m. Gerard booked the first appointment of the day. He wanted the doctor to examine the shaving injury he had gotten on Friday morning. The doctor was told by the practice receptionist that Gerard's wife had gone missing. She instinctively made the appointment a longer one in case grief counseling was needed. However, the person the doctor met was quite composed and only wanted to focus on the facial injury. He seemed to be in quite a hurry. Gerard told the doctor he had gotten the abrasions when he rushed to shave. The injury left 3 vertical marks down his right cheek and didn't notice any bleeding at first. He told the doctor that the police indicated he should have his injuries documented and asked for a copy of the medical appointment. The doctor wrote in a statement that he could not be certain as to the cause of Gerard's facial injuries. He felt that it was unlikely they were caused by shaving. He did not notice any bleeding since it would have taken 2 or more shaving motions. After the appointment, the doctor noted in his observations that he felt Gerard's injury was not caused by a razor but looked more like scratches. Given that his wife was missing, he wanted to be careful in documenting their interaction. As Allison's body was being autopsied, Gerard had been working on collecting Allison's life insurance. Investigators would discover that Gerard was in dire financial straits and that he owed upwards of $1 million. Coincidentally, Allison's policy was worth $800,000 to $950,000. Allison's parents were eventually granted control of her estate. This included her life insurance policies. It was ordered that her 2 policies be held in a trust. The investigators' theory was that Allison fought for her life, leaving behind those deep gouge marks on his face. In the end, Gerard caused her death. Her friend described Allison as soft and gentle. On that night she fought like hell, leaving evidence behind to make sure Gerard Baden-Clay didn't get away with it. Everyone thought that there would be a quick arrest and conviction of Gerard Baden-Clay. Unfortunately, this was not the case, as all the evidence the police had was circumstantial. They needed more if they were going to bring Gerard to justice. One piece of evidence that would help solidify the case against Gerard were leaves found knotted in Allison's hair. 6 different types of leaves were found, with only 2 being from the Colo Creek area. All 6 could be found in the backyard of the Baden-Clay residence. It showed where Allison was killed. After Gerard killed her, he dragged her body across the back patio and into the back of the Captiva. Gerard Baden-Clay was arrested and charged with Allison's murder and interfering with a corpse on June 13, 2012. Gerard claimed his innocence, pleading not guilty. He stated that he could not have murdered his wife because he would not have left his 3 young girls home alone that night. Investigators felt that Gerard most likely left his girls unattended when he disposed of their mother's body. Gerard was denied release, bail, on June 22 and remained in jail until his trial. Gerard would file another application for bail in December 2012. This came after the toxicology reports showed that Allison had traces of an antidepressant drug in her blood. To the defense, it opened the door to the possibility that Allison had taken her own life. On March 11, 2013, Gerard's committal hearing, preliminary hearing, commenced. The purpose was to determine if there was enough evidence to proceed to a formal trial. More than 40 witnesses would testify. The court heard the Crown, or prosecution, theory that Gerard wanted to cash in on his wife's life insurance policy to clear his debts. Ultimately, he wanted to be with his mistress. The defense denied the prosecution theory and told the court that Allison was depressed. She was troubled by her marriage eroding, that she may have taken her own life. The court would also hear from neighbors who heard a woman screaming on the night Allison disappeared. They heard from his former business partners. They warned Gerard that he needed to leave his wife or his mistress. He needed to make a decision or they would no longer be partners. A forensic accountant testified that Gerard owed around $300,000 to various family and friends. He only had about $70,000 in assets. Tony McHugh testified that Gerard contacted her and told her to lay low after his wife disappeared. She also indicated that he didn't have the money for a divorce. Outside of court, Gerard's family stood by him, and his defense attorneys felt the hearing went in their favor. Gerard's pre-trial hearing took place on February 3, 2014. This is to clear up any disputes the defense or prosecution had, and also to work out any plea deals prior to the trial commencing. At this hearing, Allison's autopsy results were discussed, as well as testimony from Baden-Clay's marriage counselor. The hearing continued into early June 2014, with a discussion about potential jurors being polled prior to selection. They would be asked if they have ever given any funds relating to the disappearance of Allison, or if they or their immediate family lived in a particular area, and if they have ever talked about Gerard's guilt or innocence. That same month, 7 men and 5 women, with 3 in reserve, are selected to serve on the jury. Allison's diaries were brought into evidence when the trial started on June 10, 2014. Using the diaries, jurors heard Allison's thoughts about her marriage and struggles and how she wanted to make her marriage work despite Gerard's betrayal. The prosecutor's theory was Gerard murdered Allison for financial gain. Gerard testified on his behalf. His side of the story was that he was a liar with everything he said in the past, but now at the trial, it was all the truth. Gerard admitted at trial to his 4-year affair with Tony. He also admitted to other affairs. None of them mattered, as in his mind they meant nothing to him. The jury didn't buy what Gerard was selling, and on July 15 he was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 15 years. In August 2015, Gerard's defense attorneys filed an appeal based on a new theory. Now they were saying that Gerard had unintentionally killed Allison during an argument. He panicked and tried to cover up the murder. In a surprising twist, Gerard won his appeal on December 8 of that year. Instead of being convicted of murder, his conviction was changed to manslaughter. The Court of Appeals stated that even though Gerard had lied about how he got the scratches on his face and tried to cover up Allison's death, there was a reasonable assumption he was innocent of intentional murder. The court disregarded the Crown's motive that the murder was for financial gain. His marriage difficulties were not sufficient to support a murder conviction, and the prosecution erred when they didn't present evidence to rule out accidental death. In July 2016, the High Court, made up of 5 judges, heard the appeal from the Queensland prosecutors, who argued against the downgrading of Baden-Clay's original conviction. The High Court grilled the defense as to the change in their case. Originally, Gerard Baden-Clay had nothing to do with Allison's murder. The next thing you know, she accidentally died from a blow to her head after falling during their argument. In a unanimous decision in August, the High Court reinstated the original Gerard Baden-Clay conviction. They ruled that the appeals court erred when they accepted the alternative theory as to Allison's death that was not in evidence at the original trial, and that the prosecution was not responsible to rule out an accidental death for the jury, as Baden-Clay's defense at that time was that Gerard had nothing to do with Allison's death. Don't forget that Gerard took the stand in his own defense denying he had anything to do with Allison's murder.
Number 6.
31-year-old Bhagwaniala Lall, aka Moses Lall, has been missing since June 4, 1994. He disappeared along with his aunt, Lilawati Buaratan, from their Velazquez Road ranch located near West Palm Beach in Loxahatchee, Florida. Lall lived in the capital of Georgetown with his 6 siblings. In the 1970s, his family started a business that bred and exported wild animals on the northern coast of South America. In the early 1980s, Lall moved to Toronto, Canada and briefly attended college. He joined Malabar Aviary a family business set up in the United States where he imported and sold birds from Guyana. In the early 1980s, he moved to Long Island, New York, and rented an old warehouse building in Queens to settle birds imported from Guyana that had to be quarantined for 30 days. He later moved to South Florida in 1987. In December of 1992, he moved to Loxahatchee, Florida with his aunt, Lillowattie Buratton, where they rented a 5-acre ranch on Velazquez Road, near West Palm Beach. They continued to import and breed exotic birds ranging from large macaws to smaller parrots and toucans. Living privately, they rarely interacted with the local aviculture community. Loxahatchee was a favored place for aviculturists, estimated to be the first home of about 50% of the exotic birds in the country. The ranch did not have a license from the Florida Game and Freshwater Fish Commission to legally breed and sell birds within the state of Florida. They claimed that the birds were not up for sale and were being bred for their personal pleasure. Lall was in charge of the ranch's daily operations, while Buratton was the birds' caregiver. They also employed 2 ranch hands, Hari Gobbin and Roland Felix Am. On June 4, 1994, a delivery man from the Bird Haven Feed Company arrived at the ranch to deliver the weekly supply to Lall and Buratton's birds. When no one came to meet him, he hopped the fence to check inside the ranch, but Lall and Buratton were missing along with their 2 workers. He piled up the feed delivery at the front gate and left. On June 5, 1994, the delivery man returned to the ranch and discovered the feed from the day before was left untouched at the front gate. Growing concerned, he notified the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department. Authorities didn't begin the investigation until June 15, 1994, due to the case's jurisdiction being sent between Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department, Palm Beach County Animal Control, and Florida Game and Freshwater Fish Commission. When they finally arrived on scene, police found rows of cages with birds either dead or dying from starvation and dehydration. Bhagwaniala Lall was nowhere to be seen. His aunt, Lillowattie Buratton, along with their 2 ranch hands, Daljeet Gobbin and Roland Felix Am, were also missing. It was estimated from the farm's inventory of the feed left in the garage that the birds had not been fed in at least 10 days. When animal control experts took charge of the animals, there were approximately $500,000 worth of wild birds inside the ranch. Roland Am was a reptile dealer who befriended Lall during a trip to Africa. He had been employed at the ranch since its opening in 1992. On June 18, 1994, Am was located in New York City, New York, 2 days after the investigation started. He told investigators he had quit working at the ranch 2 weeks before Moses and Lila were reported missing. He also recalled a story told by Gobbin around June 4 or 5 about witnessing 2 unidentified men taking away Lall and Buratton in a white van at gunpoint, along with some of the birds. Authorities learned that Lall had been working on a plan to import reptiles from Africa and had reportedly borrowed money from some underworld figures. They began to suspect that Lall and Buratton might have been abducted, but never found evidence to substantiate the theory. 38-year-old Daljeet Gobbin was a fellow native from Guyana who had worked for Lall and Buratton since they started the ranch in 1992. In October 1993, Lall told his mother that Gobbin stole $29,000 from the ranch. He had filed charges but later dropped them when Gobbin agreed to return the money. He was allowed to return and continued to work at the ranch. On June 7, 1994, a man was arrested on traffic charges in Richland Hills, Georgia, by a state trooper as he was changing a tire. He was taken in for driving with a suspended license and later released on $318 bail. The man's driver license identified him as Bhagwaniala Lall, and the white 1992 Plymouth Voyager van he was driving was also registered to Lall. Authorities only learned from the mugshot and fingerprints sent by Richmond Hill Police after the man's release from custody that he was in fact Hari Gobbin, one of the ranch hands. Gobbin disappeared after that encounter and had not been heard from since. Police believe Gobbin has vital details in regard to the case and he is wanted for questioning by police. He is described as Asian, originally from Guyana, 5'7" tall with black hair and brown eyes. Mahadi Lall, Lall's mother and Buratan's sister, attempted to purchase the birds from the government as family property, but she was met with a bill of $180,000 from Animal Control, the standard charge for the care of the confiscated animals. On August 22, 1994, the ranch's surviving birds were ordered by a Florida judge to be publicly auctioned off to raise the money. Foul play is strongly suspected in Bhagwaniala Lall's disappearance, and authorities believe he was taken against his will by unknown men. The circumstances of Bhagwaniala Lall's disappearance remain unclear, and his case is currently classified as endangered and missing. His case remains unsolved. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Bhagwaniala Lall, please contact the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department at 561-688-3000.